and I welcome, obviously, the opportunity to speak on this bill, the Withdrawal of the United Kingdom from the European Union Consequential Provisions Bill 2019. And as other speakers have said, I suppose this is a bill that everyone hopes will not be needed, will not be implemented, or not need to be implemented. It is emergency legislation, and certainly there's a lot of worry and concern out there in relation to what might happen in a Brexit situation, whether it be a no-deal Brexit or a softer type of Brexit. There'll certainly be difficulties for Ireland in either case. I have to say that I do think that it's quite late in the day to be bringing this legislation into the chamber, and it is a very, very tight timescale. And I wonder if there is in fact enough time for proper consultation in relation to it. I note that other European countries who will be affected by a Brexit situation, but not anything like as badly or with as much difficulty as ourselves, have already their legislation in place for a number of months now. Many of the provisions in the bill are obviously necessary. Many are not controversial. Various areas like pensions, like student supports, like healthcare, like the common travel area, which now we put on a statutory footing, and obviously that's an important element, particularly as I think there's well over 500,000 people born in Ireland who now live in Britain. So there are various portions of the bill and provisions in the bill that are reasonably straightforward and, as I say, non-controversial. But sometimes, Count Corla, as you will know, what is not in a bill can be as important and maybe even more important than what is in the bill. And in this particular piece of legislation, I think there's two elements that certainly jump out for me. The first is that what appears to me certainly to be what amounts to a corporate bailout under this bill, on the one hand, with serious grants and supports, whereas on the other hand, no quid pro quo, no supports outlined in the bill for workers who are in fear of losing their jobs, no support for lower paid workers, and no support for social welfare recipients. And I say that because obviously in the last big crisis in this country, which was the collapse back in 2007, 2008, and around then, effectively what happened was that ordinary families paid the burden, were made to pay the burden for that particular collapse, not of their making, but they paid for it through austerity. They paid for it through the reduction in the minimum wage. They paid for it through the reductions in social welfare, and many of those reductions have not been reversed since. So I certainly feel that these are two areas that need to be strengthened and need to be dealt with. And for instance, like Retail Ireland has warned very recently that in the event of a hard Brexit, retail prices could rise by as much as 45%, and that even in a softer Brexit would give a significant price increases. Yet there's nothing, as I said, in the legislation to protect living standards. Obviously those living on state pensions and other social welfare payments and lowly paid workers in that situation would be very badly hit. People in these categories spend almost their entire income on everyday purchases, including food, and obviously price rises, in my view, will have to be matched at a minimum with increases in pay and welfare payments. I believe that the minimum wage must be sharply increased, and as I said, this legislation, by omitting provisions like this, show to me again that this government has a continuing bias, towards the wealthy in our society. And I believe that trade unionists and other activists must not allow this crisis to be dumped on workers and the poor, like the last crisis was. And I believe if that happens, there will be, people will be on the streets and there will be pickets in relation to it. As I said, I believe that grants to businesses under this legislation must be made conditional on a number of things. First of all, it must be made conditional on layoffs of employees being ruled out. It must be conditional on the freezing of prices, and must be conditional on increases in the minimum wage and social welfare payments. As I said, in the last crisis that we had, the very, very wealthy have come through that crisis and now have billions of euro more than they had even at the height of the boom. We have continued to give hundreds of millions of euros to very wealthy people in the last 3 budgets, and I believe that should be clawed back. And I also believe that, arising from the last crisis, that the EU owes Ireland billions due to its insistence that Irish citizens bail out private investors in private banks. I think, Ceann Comhairle, that the British government and the European Union must be told that there will be no hardening of the existing border. Whatever way they sort it out between themselves, no hardening will be tolerated by Irish people, I believe. And indeed, the existence of any border is an affront, I believe, to Irish sovereignty and the sovereignty of the Irish people, as expressed in the 1916 proclamation and the First Dáil. So I believe that the imposition of a harder border by Britain or by the EU or by the Irish government will be met by mass mobilisation. Hardening of the border will, in my view, simply not be accepted. And I believe also that Britain should be told that there will be no dumping of radioactive waste on the island of Ireland. It would appear that they have earmarked a site in the Moor Mountains in relation to this. The problems now arising due to Brexit are consequences of the failure to create a united, sovereign 32-county Ireland. And I believe that the danger to Irish people of allowing part of the island of Ireland to remain under British sovereignty now and in the future could not be more clear.
Thank you, Deputy.
And I'll finish now, Ceann Comhairle. The Supreme Court in the United Kingdom, for instance, found that there's no compulsion on the British government even to consult the Belfast Assembly or its executive about removing the 6 counties from the EU. And of course, any question of consulting this Parliament didn't even arise. I believe that the 1916 leaders were right, that we should ensure that a 32-county sovereign republic would be built, and I think we should set our sights on that from now on.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Now we move on to